fellas, welcome to this week's episode of Halloweekly. Nick and George here with. What time is it?
So it is the earliest we have ever recorded a podcast in hundreds of episodes, but we're recording it about something called Midnight Mass.
So we're a couple hours off.
we're
a couple hours.
We're closer to midnight than we're closer to midnight the other way.
Yeah, we backwards.
Midnight just happened. Like midnight just happened, man. But we're here to bring it. This is I really want to sell this show because everyone should give it a chance. This is an amazing piece of work,
dude. I feel like Mike Flanagan I don't know if it's every other year, because I was looking at like when Hill House came out, I was looking at when Bly Manor came out, and this just came out like last week or something like that, like a couple week and some change. And I feel like whenever Mike Flanagan releases a new series, to me, like that's the start of October. Like I feel like
he's become our Bravo's scariest moment.
Yeah, somehow. he rings in like Halloween season for us now. Like
it's crazy.
Like it was the same with Hill House. Like because I don't remember. Like I felt like they came out like right before October or like in that same time frame. But like they were always there in the month of October to like really set the tone for
right. And now we just know in advance. We know in advance what Halloween 2022 looks like. It's going to be Mike Flanagan, Fall of the House of Usher,
dude.
Edgar Allan Poe.
How cool is that, so dude?
Excited. Like, I'm so excited. There's a great horror author. He didn't get quite the renown that probably, definitely not King or Clive Barker, but I'm not even sure he hit the Peter Straub level at his height, but he probably deserved to. His name's Robert R. McCammon, and he wrote Swan Song, which is a great horror novel. But he wrote a book called Usher's Passing. It was the first book I read, and it was a take on the fall of the House of Usher. And after I was done reading it, I'm like, why aren't more people doing this material? This is so amazing.
So I'm not,
and now Mike Flanagan's hit it.
I'm not 100% familiar on Fall of the House of Usher. I know that was a Vincent Price movie back in the day. Is that right? It was an older movie, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the Corman cycle. They always did. They were doing all the Poe things, so that was part of it. There's been a lot of adaptations of it. Poe was kind of literary. He was very literary back then, so you could respectable like people like Bev Keane in Midnight Mass would have taught Poe in school, right? So he had
she would have been like Edgar Allan Poe, that heretic.
But he had a weird respectability, which is ironic considering he was the least respectable major American author ever. But it's really just a Hill House vibe, right? Usher is physically connected. The house is physically connected to the family. It's sort of like a Portrait of Dorian Gray situation. The family's fortunes are in decline. The house is in decline. When someone gets a headache, a door splits in half, right? It's a crazy cool. It's just perfect. It's perfect for him. It's gonna be great.
I am so excited. Okay, so Midnight Mass. I think he wrote this. Like this is like an original thing from him, right? Like this is
this I got a lot of my information about this from your fiance. So like
I know
the idea here, right? Good.
Yeah, like we ended it, and then like she like I really like this is my favorite out of the 3 series he's done, but like she really loved it, and like after we finished it that night, like because it's so existential, like she was like, I need answers, and so she was like reading interviews with Mike Flanagan like the rest of the night, and I was trying to sleep when I was here. Did you know that like he's got like 3 kids, and he was writing this for 10 years, and he had to rewrite the conversations, and a lot of the dialogue is him having conversations with himself throughout the years, and I was like, 1, that makes the show way more awesome. 2, can we talk about this in the morning?
Right. Right. And now here you are talking about it in the morning.
In the morning, yeah. Exactly.
Way too early. The ironic thing, though, is it does seem to be his passion project. He said it's the best thing he's done up to this point. And let's not forget, I mean, he's done a lot of the major horror movies of the last few years aware as well. He's really well known for Gerald's Game. He did Doctor Sleep, right? So and a lot of other stuff. So he and Oculus, which I happen to have loved, and it's weird because if he thinks this is the best thing he's done, but it seems like he's been working on it over like a 20-year span, and that means a lot has changed from how he originally conceived it. A lot has been shuffled or added in, and you can tell it's almost like archaeology, right? There will be lines of dialogue in there that sound like written by someone who's a lot more optimistic or pessimistic than they might be now, right? So it's interesting that he grew throughout the whole project, which is really cool.
Yeah,
and you fell in love with it first. I actually, it's weird. I have it ranked just like you. I like this the best. I like Blind Manor second best. I like Hill House the least of the three, even though I basically love all of them.
Yeah.
And I do consider Hill House probably the scariest just in terms of traditional horror scares of the three. But Bly Manor, which I really liked, had a wearying effect somehow. The idea of even rewatching it felt heavy, and it made me a little less excited somehow, even though it was better, right? And how unfair to artists. Like, he does Hill House, then he does Bly Manor, which I liked more, and then he drops the third one, and I'm like, nah, I'm going to penalize you for doing better and not get that excited about your new project, because Bly Manor felt really heavy. It felt like reading a Russian novel somehow at times, right? So even though it's amazing. So I knew I was going to watch Midnight Mass. I knew the odds were huge that I was going to love it, but for some reason I just didn't rush into it like you guys did, and you and Alex watched it right away, and I kept getting updates from you of how great it was.
We actually,
you didn't?
No, so we actually watched the trailer. So like we knew we were gonna watch it, or at least I knew I was gonna watch it, and we watched a little bit of the trailer, and I think Alex just wasn't in the mood to get into like a series like that, because we had just finished like a couple series like back to back pretty much, and for the horror community, they'll think this is really scary, but one of the series we watched was Gossip Girl, and I fucking love that show, dude.
Yeah,
that show is great. Don't get me into the drama between B and S, okay? But I kept looking at
what that means, but
exactly. Be afraid. I kept looking at.
But you didn't. You were thinking maybe not pick up a big show right away.
Well,
so when did you watch? Like, how did you jump into it?
So I think R.C. Martin in the Halloweekly group was posting about it, and I saw some discourse in the Halloweekly group, which if you're listening to this, join it. About some people, it was the typical horror discussion of, oh, it's not that scary, blah blah blah, and then I was like, well, what are like the critics saying? And it was like 92%, and I was like, okay, well, I think we should probably check it out, because it's pretty unanimous.
Seems really good,
it's pretty unanimous. This is a great goddamn show. so then we fired it up, and I think I connected with it pretty quick. Like, I immediately loved that opening with the girl who ended up being the ghost for our quote main guy with the glass in her face,
right?
And then
that opening, the very first shot of the fish on his car, and how the police lights were lighting it up, and all you were seeing was that Christian fish outline, and it was the most beautiful, like, Christmas ornament looking, and then it pulls back and you realize the scene you're looking at, and it's horrible. It's so horrible. It was so pretty, and then it got so horrible. And then as it cuts out, it flashes over to the girl laying there, and it got so pretty again.
Right?
She was like part stained glass. It was incredible.
Yeah, and when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is gonna be great. And then when I noticed, or when they introduced, was it Crocker, the Crockpot, the island?
The Crockpot, yep.
As soon as I saw that, like, this whole like series was pretty much going to take place on a small island. Like, I'm a sucker for small settings, so I was like, oh, This is gonna be
Yeah, like the fog. It was like the fog. You all of a sudden you had that feeling. You were. It's that's amazing.
yeah, no. So I knew right away that like I was really gonna dig this. And
So it didn't take Alex and you long to
no, but
to get into it.
and the other thing is weren't we, was it you and I don't know if we did this on an episode or if it was Alex and I, but we were talking about like what genuinely scares us, and the one thing that I said that I thought was like really freaky that not a lot of horror movies did was like eyes glowing. And like the first episode is just 1,000 eyes glowing. So I was like, oh, they're doing it, and it's everything I wanted.
The cats, the cats, and then when the kids are getting high and telling urban legend stories about Harpoon Harry or whatever, and then it flashes over and you get your first glimpse of the there's gonna, by the way, there's spoilers galore in this episode, so just strap in. We highly recommend that you watch it without spoilers, so walk away and come back to this.
Watch it, take a week off, because this is a very existential series. Like,
it is
hardcore.
It is, right? But and then you see the first of the Dark Angel and the eyes and the whatever they did musically with that first reveal is just chef's kiss. It's so good.
No, it was great.
Okay, so I got good news for you though, because you're ready for this. I've already rewatched half of it. Not only did I lap you, I started after you, but now I've watched the whole series. But I rewatched the first 2 episodes again, and I did it on purpose because I knew we were recording this episode, and I had a hunch, and my hunch is so right.
Oh,
right?
lay it on me.
So there's something I want to say about this just out of the gate. First of all, right? I am disinclined as a person to enjoy what I think of as like college dorm philosophizing, right? Mm-hmm. So, can God make rocks that people can't lift, or like whatever, all that stuff where people sit around and do whatever. Anne Rice had that disease when she was writing her existential vampire interview with the vampire, cycle, whatever. But, so I really thought I might be in trouble with this series because there is a lot of that. And I see a lot of complaining online that it's a little slow or very monologue heavy or very talky, et cetera, et cetera. And honestly, not only all of that is true, weirdly, mm-hmm. But the thing is, I think Midnight Mass might be helping me as someone who appreciates and loves horror to realize that there might be different ways to grade things than Rotten Tomatoes score or whether there's good or bad things in them, right? I started to realize when I was watching this that even if it isn't perfect, even if it has a couple of flaws, even if it is a little like baggy in terms of it's filled with speechifying, there are things in this show that are 10 times better than you will find them anywhere else in horror right now, maybe even in basically dark or mainstream entertainment right now. And that in and of itself kind of makes it more than worth it, right? Because first of all, Hamish Linklater, the actor who plays the priest, gives like a performance for the ages, mm-hmm. along with Bev Keane, both of them. And I don't want to sell the other actors short, but those two alone do something in this show that is so much better than you're going to get elsewhere, that even if it falls down. So think about it like this. If it was like traditional letter grades, right? If you're scoring on like whether it's a B here or a C+ here or whatever, the thing is you have to go up off the letter chart. You have to go 10 letters above A, wherever that would be. You'd have to make up a letter 10 spots higher than A for a couple of things that are going on there. And you just aren't, it's like in, Final Destination when the guy swings the hammer to win the prize and knocks the bell off the top of the thing because he's so strong, right? Like there's no bell left on this. So even if Mike Flanagan steps up, in episode 3 and goes to swing the hammer, and the little iron thing only goes halfway up the runner or whatever. There's no bell there anymore because he blew the fucker off.
Right.
with other things he did in this show. And that's really where what's going to make it special is, right? But the reason I'm saying all this is because I had a hunch that if you care about the show and if you care about the characters in the show and if you buy into the setting, which I think is the first time since Twin Peaks that I can turn to people who never experienced Twin Peaks and say that excitement you're feeling about Midnight Mass, that's how I felt about watching the original Twin Peaks, right? What you're feeling right now when the camera's panning along Crockett Island and Riley's chasing the angel across the beach in a lightning storm and you're just hanging out with the characters, walking up and down the roads, and you're into, what's happening on the island. And that's a Twin Peaks vibe. That's an OG Twin Peaks vibe, right? So, but the thing that is amazing to me is what happens on a rewatch. Dude, I was like, I'm going to just take very small notes and rewatch a couple episodes so that I can prepare for us recording this podcast. I have like 30 notes from the first 20 minutes of episode 1.
No way.
From the rewatch. And I'm not going to go through them all. I'm just saying once you realize what happens in this show and you go back and rewatch it. Here, I'll give you a couple of examples.
Lay it on me.
So now that you know what's happening in the show, right? There's this moment when first of all, the fact that a show where we're going to spend the entire time on Crockett Island, the entire time, right? But the show starts on a shot of the most gorgeous Blade Runner-esque picture of a big modern city because the car is framed in the background with like the perfect desktop background of a gorgeous modern city. It actually reminded me of the opening of Candyman. But we're never going to see anything that doesn't look like fucking Island again, right? As soon as Riley gets to the island, we're just in Crockett Island for the whole rest of the show, basically, right? So the fact that it starts with a visual that is totally unrepresentative of what the show is going to be, and the fact that everyone you meet in the show is basically unrepresentative of who they really are. The show is mirroring what the characters are doing, right? So just from the fact alone that it's set up that way, and then all of the double meanings that you start to see in what the characters are saying to each other. When Monsignor Pruitt, when Father Paul Hill arrives in the crockpot, right? The first kind of like ships in Dracula. So the first thing I think of is that ship in the storm that always brings Dracula from Transylvania to London, right? Mm-hmm. It's in every Dracula rendition. It's the big ship where the guy ties himself to the steering wheel and everyone gets eaten and there's just bodies and the ship just floats up to the London dock like a ghost ship and unleashes Dracula like the plague on London, right? So there's this trope in vampire, lore about vampires can't cross water theoretically. So if they're on the ship and they're in their boxes of dirt and the ghost plague ship always shows up, right? So then we immediately cut to, in this, because Flanagan is a genius this way, we immediately cut to a ship. And the ship is the ferry. And the ferry is bringing the bad thing. But the bad thing is Riley Flynn, right? The island, the worst thing that the island thinks that the worst thing that's going to land on this island is this murderer, Riley Flynn, this bad reputation guy who, and up to now, all they had was Joe Collie who had shot someone and paralyzed or partially paralyzed them, but hadn't even killed them, right? So the worst villain on the island was Joe. And now Joe's being replaced by the baddest villain of all, the murderer from the big city, Riley Flynn. So we cut to this ship and it's just like smoothly sailing, heading towards the island. You got these shots of Riley on it. And so it's the vampire like villain approaches trope, but it's a complete fake out. It's a complete re-engineering of that trope. And then the vampire just sneaks in, right? Like he's on the same ship, but he's just minding his business, dragging his own kind of crate, like whatever. Paul Hill kind of sneaks in with no fanfare. Bev shows up at the docks and she's like, "Where's Monsignor Pruitt?" And Sturge is like, "I don't know." And she's like, "He's kind of hard to miss." Right? Like, so it's the total vampire Demeter ship Dracula trope,
right?
But re-engineered so subtly and coolly that it's like it's a fresh take on it, but also a commentary on how it would be in modern times. It wouldn't be the big romantic storm. It'd be a perfect day, clear skies, and then just the ferry rolls in. Next thing your whole island screwed, right? But not for the reason you think it is. So just from that alone, I find it amazing that he was able to rework a lot of the religious elements that have to do with vampirism, a lot of the way vampire tropes work, into this new structure that he was building. It's just phenomenal. But the special thing here is Midnight Mass isn't just the best horror show that I've seen in quite a while. It's a horror show that I knew was going to give me two pleasures. The first pleasure was the first watch, and the second pleasure was the second watch, knowing the whole story and catching all of the cool things that were happening. And there are so many cool double meaning things that happen once you know what's going on, right? When the father, gets up there and he's giving his very first sermon to the people, and he's telling them, he's like, he literally says the very first episode, the very first time he speaks to the church when he walks in and they're expecting Pruitt and they get Hill. And he goes, "So where is all this headed? It's headed for Easter. It's headed for rebirth. It's headed for immortality." And like, we watched that. I watched that on the first pass as a viewer and thought zero things about it, except for he's a good preacher, right?
He's straight just laying down his plan.
He was straight out laying down. He was doing the James Bond villain, I'm going to tell you everything is going to happen to you, but he's not doing it in the third act after he catches James Bond. He's doing it immediately.
You know what's crazy about that?
You just don't know it. What's that?
So comparing this is a weird comparison, but comparing this to the Many Saints of Newark, because that was the one thing that I kept thinking about after you were telling me, like in The Sopranos, when people say they're going to do something, it's the thing they should be doing, but then they do the opposite. But in Midnight Mass, they say the thing, but instead of flipping it, they actually lean into what they say. So it's like flipped.
Totally. And honestly, not to get too deep about it, but I think I told you before, my absolute favorite thing I've ever read anyone say about Shakespeare was that his characters were the first characters in literature to become free artists of themselves. So what the writers, I think it was Nietzsche, what they said was they listen to themselves talk and they change based on what they hear themselves saying, right? So Hamlet in Act 5 is different than Hamlet in Act 1, but it's because he's been listening to his own speeches. So these characters are setting out loud what they're going to do. And then the characters, the ones we care about, the ones we really follow, the ones like Riley and I forget her name right now, but it'll come to me. The Kate Seagal, the Mike Flanagan,
Aaron,
her character, Aaron Green, right? So they're and she, I mean, that performance is just phenomenal, and she's probably the best of all the characters in the entire show at changing based upon what she's been thinking all along, right? She says a thing, later in the show near the end where Riley takes her out on a boat. She's in a very isolated situation.
This is my favorite part of the whole. That's my favorite part of the whole series.
The 30 Days of Night part, yeah, the 30 Days of Night part is pretty amazing. But he takes her out of the boat, and she goes, "Did you take me here to scare me?" And she basically says, I'm paraphrasing, because it won't work because I've decided I don't let people do that to me anymore. Right? Think of the power of especially in a horror context, right? Of being it would be like Jason coming up on you in the woods unexpected and you turn around and being like, "No, I don't allow you to do this."
He's like just
right. It's like a superpower almost, right? And he might kill her there. She might run into bad, outcomes there, whatever. But she's not going to allow herself to be scared, right? And that is something that has happened over time as she's kind of processed what's going on the island, what's been going on in her life, what's going on inside her emotionally. But she's articulating it all in a really cool way as it goes, so we see how she's getting where she's getting, right? And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about the show the most is just like almost to a painful, boring level. We never are in a mystery of how characters get to where they get to, because we always see it on the island. They're fucking walking from point A to point B, and then back from B to A, and then on a boat from here to here, and then over here to over here. We know how they're going, but I don't think it's an accident that visually we're always following the characters going from point A to point B, because they're also emotionally always going from point A to point B, right? So, did you find it scary? And what's your scarometer on this show?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would probably say, so if I had to put Hill House, if I had to compare it, I would say I'd probably put Hill House around like probably 7 or 8, like especially like the basement scenes was really scary. This one, Midnight Mass, I think I'd probably put that at like a 6. Like it wasn't really scary, but like there were some really unsettling things in there that it sort of had the personal shopper effect, where when you watch it, it's not very scary, but then you get ready to go to bed and you turn on all the lights and like you're like, what if something like grazed my back or something like that? Like what if something's like in the other room? Because when we finished it, I was turning out all the lights and I just like, because it's very existential at the end. Like I think everyone who finishes Midnight Mass kind of sits there for a few minutes and like quietly and they're just like trying to process it. So after we did that, I was like getting ready to go to bed, and like I just felt like I did with Personal Shopper, I just felt completely unnerved for some reason, and I don't know why, but it wasn't like a Hereditary, but it was like a 6, but like a good 6, if that makes sense.
It does. That's the thing, is I felt like in traditional horror scarometer terms, it's almost a 5. There are some effective moments. There's some really quick lunges from the main vampire that are really effectively done.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of the only, and I stress only, good thing in Dracula Untold, which is Charles Dance playing the ancient vampire, right? That's a pretty cool thing to pull off, and they do that in this show as well. So there's some of that, but it's the scarometer is a 5. The unsettle you and make you feel like life is a lot more corrupt and dark than you expected. It's like a 15.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is that's where it hits. It hits kind of in a different place. Most of weirdly, the most devastating moments are almost never paranormal, right? Or even if there's something paranormal happening, there, like in the Easter Vigil, really the worst things that are happening in the church until until From Dusk Till Dawn breaks out is they're not the supernatural parts. It's how the people in the pews cannot update themselves fast enough on the changing situation to save themselves, and that's a terrible feeling.
Yeah,
right? It's like that movie where they're sitting watching the avalanche come down the hill, and the guy's with his family, and he's like, "No, it's fine." He's like, "This happens all the time here," and they're like, "It's getting awfully close." "No, it's fine." And then all of a sudden, the apple boulders are landing next to their like breakfast table, boulders of ice. And the family's like, "It's not fine," right? Like they didn't update themselves fast enough to the oncoming danger, and you keep wanting to yell at them, like, "Get out," like, whatever. But you can't save them; they can't save themselves. It's that kind of thing. But the devastating moments in this show are really quiet. There's a moment I caught on the rewatch early on when Riley gets out of jail and he's coming back home on the ferry, a la Nosferatu, and as his mom calls him, and she's talking really like basically loud, like, "I love you, honey. Did they give you all your things back? Do you know what time we're gonna pick you up?" Just mundane, conversation, and she's talking at kind of the level I'm talking now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what I didn't notice on the first watch, and it really broke my heart when I realized what was happening. She's talking really loud. Her other son, who's younger than Riley, is in the kitchen. Her husband is about to leave the kitchen, and she's like, blah 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 blah, and then she goes, "Okay, well, I'll see you soon. I love you. I love you." And then she drops her voice, like she's embarrassed to tell her own son that she loves him because of the bad thing he did, right? Like the fact that she feels like it's not safe in her own home to express love to her son, who is now a murderer, is so sad.
Yeah, well, that's what made
right?
that's what made
And this show has those moments.
Well, that's what made the part when Riley eventually becomes a vampire soup and he doesn't show up for work on his father's dock, and it's the first time like you start to see the dad like show some love for his son, but it's like it's very very gradual. And then that moment when he doesn't show up and like he like slaps the crate full of crab at his son.
I burst out laughing when he did that, by the way.
Yeah, because the crab's like, whoa.
I hated his character. I hated his character, man. I absolutely hated his character.
Did you hate him towards the end when he started to show the fact that
dude, I hated him all the way. I hated him all the way through. I have no forgiveness in my heart for him. I'm sorry.
No way.
That guy is that dude is terrible. He's either a miss on the writing, or I'm just not disposed to catch whatever's supposed to be going on with that character, because he was nothing but bad to me. Matter of fact, him and his mom were like, they were a huge part of the problem of what was going on the island in general. Right? Like they were in complete denial when Aaron shows up after Riley 30 days and nights himself. That when Aaron shows up and says, Riley's dead, and he wanted me to come save his family if I could. And she goes, "You're not funny. Why would you say that? You're not funny." Oh, yeah. And it's sort of true and sort of accurate as a response, right? It's sort of like heartbreaking and whatever. But if you're only going to show me a character, so basically I'll map out Riley as I see it. I'll map out Riley's parents' character arc for you. In delusion, not really supportive. In delusion, figured out everything that happened, sing a song, die. Right? That's their character. That's their character arc to me, right? It's like 98% in delusion, have a realization of what's happening, sing a choral song with everybody else, and then immolate, right? That's their character arc. So I'm not impressed with their. The mom I had a lot more sympathy for than the dad. The dad might be my least favorite character on the entire damn show.
Oh no, you're no way. Even at the end when he embraced his wife, like there's no
Who cares?
Way.
Who cares? There are 7 episodes, man.
No, man.
There's 7 episodes. He did one thing. He embraced his own wife. Like, what kind of idiot wouldn't think to do that at the end? Unreal. His character was trash.
I liked him, man, because that's the thing I like about the Mike Flanagan stuff, and I think that's why I really liked, because I know a lot of people like Bly Manor over Hill House. I think I have Hill House ranked second, in my opinion, because there's something that Mike Flanagan does about like family, and and how complicated families are, and I think that's why I liked Midnight Mass, because it's so hard to like show the complication unless you do like some really boring melodrama, like some,
totally.
The families. I don't know. I just think there's a complication there that is super hard to pull off, and also super hard to make easy for an audience. And I think he did it really well with the dad's understanding and coming around, because I don't know, it's kind of hard to, if your son murdered someone to swing back around. It's kind of difficult. I didn't actually.
Sure. I mean, I'm with you, but I agree with everything you just said. I just translate it to the whole island. I think the whole island is a family, and I think the community is really what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the community functionings because, to be honest, the inner family dynamics, like the dynamics between the sheriff and his son Ali, the dynamics between Erin and your tragic kind of, parental past and all that. Those are exactly what you're saying. Those are the melodrama, right? Those are the things that that you could just take them out of this story and drop them into the Notebook, right? And it's sort of the same kind of plot, right? So it's not. That's the thing is, I feel like those are kind of the basic building blocks, and they're good, and they got to be there. And to be honest with you, I'm not complaining. I wanted his characters. I wanted Riley's dad to be trash, because there's a laziness to the writing of redeeming everybody, right, or giving everyone insights or making everyone. It's one of the things where it's something that Stephen King does from time to time, where there's a character who just has no background or ability or capacity or anything for understanding anything in a complicated way, and then all of a sudden they're speaking in like incredibly elaborate literary metaphors about what happened to them as they're dying or whatever. You're like, wait, where did this come from? Riley's dad was obtuse the whole time. He was obtuse till the end. And then he kind of figured it out real quick with the end approaching, and then sang. I mean, whatever. Like, who couldn't do that? Like, what human being could you not plug into that role and pull that off, right? Like, basically, here, if you go to someone and you're like, you know what, I want to use non-actors in this show, right? So. What I want you to do is I want you to find someone in life who's just wrong all the time and never, really doesn't get anything right. And then they figure it all out at the end, right? So what you got to do is find someone who's just basically wrong all the time and once in a while get something right. Well, I mean, that's everybody.
That's not everyone. That's not everyone. If Donald Rumsfeld started singing, I'd be like, nah.
What? That's true. But there's... I want to talk about something. I want to ask you something and see if I'm crazy about this or not. But there is something about the cadence in which the priest and Bev talk that I could listen to for hours. I want an audiobook narrated by Father Hill or Monsignor Pruitt and a book narrated by Beverly. I love the way Bev talks. I love the way she emphasizes certain words and doesn't emphasize certain words. And there's like these sinister pauses, and then she punches the wrong things. It's like that old joke. She puts the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable all the time. Mm-hmm. But she's punching these weird words because she has this weird internal agenda. Well, right? So she doesn't talk right. But for some reason, it's sort of soothing. I don't know why. But when she brings, after the first murder and they're trying to cover it up, and she brings the two kind of like sub-apostles, the two lackeys in, Sturge and whoever, I can't remember who she first enlists into God's army. But they're standing there, they're looking at this massacre scene, right? And they're like horrified. They're like, we can't. She's like, drag it out of here. Take it, wrap it up in a carpet and get it out of here. And they're like, they're like, that's Joe Colley. He's one of us. He's our friend. That's an islander. Like, they're horrified that she's talking to them. And she's like, do not cherry pick the gifts of God. And it's like this ebb and flow of crazy in her voice where she's just like going up and down on every other word. And it's so good. And then the sermons that friggin' Father Paul gives, there should be like a book, how there's like a Meditations of Marcus Aurelius book, whatever, like the best sayings of like there's a book, the sayings of Genghis Khan or whatever. There should be like the sermons of Monsignor Pruitt book because his sermons are great.
He's had quite a bit of time to work on them. He's been around
right.
He's been around
And
for a little while.
the cadence in which he talks, and you know, I know we could find a million plot holes in this show, but I was able to ignore most of them because I didn't really feel like they were pertaining to kind of what the show was really good at. But one thing that kept bothering me was that Monsignor Pruitt had such a distinctive way of talking
It almost was
that
like,
sure they weren't going to recognize.
no, like whenever he talked, it was almost like he wasn't sure what he was gonna say, but like it was totally like a farce. Like he absolutely knew. Like there was like a shakiness in his voice.
Totally, and that's the thing is there was this a thing that he was doing where he was it was the sound of someone who had put a lot of thought into something, but was incapable of communicating it without thinking about it while they were also saying it.
Yeah.
It was the voice of an obsessive. It's an obsessive person, right? And it's also a person, and I think this is one of the greatest grace notes of the performance that Linklater gave was it was the voice of someone who had put a ton of too much thought into things, probably, right? But it was also the voice of someone who had discovered the energy they felt as when they were young, when they were first discovering the power of religion and what it meant to them or whatever. But with all the wisdom, they say this like I think my favorite. So here, I want to ask you what your favorite line in the show. I have two answers for my favorite lines in the show, right? My first favorite line, my absolute favorite line, the peak line in the show, my favorite moment is Aaron Green, right? So Bev is standing there. The vampire, the massacre is happening in the church. She's hiding. They come across her in the hall, and then Aaron pulls out a gun, and Bev is not impressed because they're vampires, right? Mm-hmm. And Aaron points the gun at Bev and goes, and Bev goes, "What are you gonna do? Shoot me? I'm a vampire. Like you'll put me down for 5 minutes. I'll be right behind you in 5 minutes, right?" And Aaron just unblinking Sidney Prescott style shoots right, and then turns to her friends and goes, "We have 5 minutes." the best line. The best line ever. Like it was the moment that Aaron and Bev were in complete agreement. Like two people on the opposite sides of a spectrum. Bev's like, "What are you gonna do? Shoot me? All I did is buy you 5 minutes." And Aaron Green, "I shot her. It bought us 5 minutes." Like they're like totally in agreement. So that was the number one thing. But the other thing was Pruitt says when he's talking to who turns out to be the love of his life. And I can't do justice to it. You just got to go watch the scene. It's in the Easter Vigil episode. Because the cadence in which he said it, I could listen to it like a music, like MP3. I could just walk and listen to him say this over and over again because it was so magic. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Because he's talking about the miracles in the Bible. And he's like, loaves and fishes? Sure. Water and wine? Yeah, naturally, sure. Part the ocean? Great. The true miracle? I got a second chance. Second chances are the true miracle, right? And the second chance kind of motif of this, because almost every character in the show at some point is given the opportunity to have a second chance of some sort, right? And it's how they play their second chance that's meaningful. What Flanagan has done here is he's given everyone a pass on their first fuck up, and he's judging them on their second time through, right? Like the first time through, you just didn't know what was going on, and you like whether it's life or your job or whatever, right? You just didn't know. But if you get a second chance and you play it just like the first chance, then you're damned. Mm-hmm. Right? Is basically that's the true theology of this show to me, right? And the thing that confirms that for me is when they give all these characters who made totally bad decisions, the people who backed up the cult, the people who killed their friends and neighbors, the people who were complicit as the island felt like they had the golden goose that was giving them miracles and making them young and making them feel great and making them feel validated. They didn't want to They didn't want to, let the outside world know that was happening. They didn't want to stop it, even though people were paying a price for it. They just wanted to ride that miracle gravy train, right? So
that's the name of my new funk band, the Miracle Gravy Train.
they were all fucking up their first chance, but on the second chance, they all realized, we have to pay the price for to save the kids. The kids are going to get out, and we are going to not let ourselves out. Like John Carpenter's The Thing. This thing can't get to the mainland. Right, it can't get to the world, so we're all going to immolate. We're all going to let ourselves blow up here, right? So they all go, the kids all whatever, and who doesn't play their second chance? Bev,
right?
Because she's the worst character. She plays her second chance like the first chance. She makes the exact same decision she would have made in the first minute of the show at the last minute of the show, right? She tries to save herself,
digging that hole in the sand.
If she managed to save herself. Right, if she managed to dig the hole, and she managed to save herself, and she managed to get off the island, she might be telling herself, well, that was a mess. Let's never do that again. But a week later, she'd be making the same mistakes and spreading the contagion across the world. Like Bev Keane could have ended the world by single-handedly by getting off that island. But and all the rest of them make the right choice with their second chance, except for Bev. And that to me is like the magic of what was going on there. I fucking love the show. I'm so excited. Rank the characters for me. Who was your least favorite character?
Oh, least favorite? Oh shit. Well, I think Bev is on both ends. I hated her and loved her at the same time. It's just something about she has this creepy cheeks. Like her smile, like her cheeks are just like it's like you look too nice. Like you look like you should be really nice, and I don't like. I dated a preacher's daughter one time. I know what that I know what that smile looks like. That shit's fake. My favorite person who I knew was gonna get axed pretty quickly was Joe Colley, because you knew that he was gonna. He was trying to redeem himself. You knew how he was super broken, and he there's no way that guy was going to survive the show.
Nope.
I kind of liked the sheriff quite a bit, and I don't feel like there was a ton of the sheriff either. Like he was.
Yeah, not till the end. He started to get a lot more involved in the last two episodes. But yeah, for sure.
But it's pretty hard not to have Aaron up top for the best.
Aaron is
awesome.
Awesome.
Because like you were saying like your favorite line of the show, and I don't know what my favorite line was. I don't, because I can't really remember like what line I liked. I remember like the chunks of dialogue, because it's like every other scene there's like a dialogue. But I really liked the when Joe and Riley were shooting the shit after going to their AA meeting. I thought that scene between them was really touching. If I had to pick a favorite line though, this isn't really a line, but I think my favorite line was Aaron screaming through the credits at the end of episode 6. There's a handful of shows where they cut to the credits and like they keep playing like some kind of music or some kind of dialogue from the show, and it's like the most stylistic thing you can do. And not a lot of shows. I know I've seen it, but I can't put my finger on where I've seen it.
David
before.
Lynch did it in Twin Peaks: The Return, and it was always great when he did it. He didn't do it in every episode, but when he did it, it's amazing.
Yeah, and the screaming through the credits, like that was to me like that was rocket fuel to be like, so we have to just finish it now. Like we have to. There's no breaks. But I think Aaron. I think Aaron's my top. Who do you got?
I honestly, the father of Pruitt, Monsignor Pruitt, is my favorite character. No, sorry, Bev is my favorite character in the entire show. I would watch a spin-off show of Bev in a heartbeat. I love Bev. I love her character. I love the actress. I love everything. Like all that is amazing. But Monsignor Pruitt, I think that show rises or falls with his character. His character is so. Somehow he incorporated like all the good, totally. He incorporated all the good things about what you love about James Mason character in Salem's Lot. Chris Sarandon's character in Fright Night. You got the arriving person who's a threat, but is also charming. and Alex, she really put her finger on the fact that he was delusional about what was happening. That it was the unaware vampire, right? It was the feeling you get when you show up at a place and everyone keeps looking at you, and then you look down and you got a big piece of food on your shirt, or something. Except for in this case, it was, you're a vampire and you don't know it. right? Like, and I'm of two minds of how aware he was of his own villainy, right? Because this is an interesting question to think about, is how aware was Pruitt of his own badness and bad decisions. And so how much of a pass are you giving him? So like when he first arrives, he's dragging a crate that has a vampire in it. He's slipping blood into communion and contagioning the town. But we're expected to believe that he's doing all of this with good intentions, right? So is that true? Or is he actually a greedy person who's trying to engineer all this because he's just trying to get his second chance, the love of his life, and he's willing to subject the whole town to all these horrors just to take the shot of reworking his own life? Because it's a profoundly selfish thing, what he's doing, right? So the question is, what are his intentions? And are they 100% good and he's just completely deluded? Are they 100% bad and he's a villain? That's really, what do you think, like, on the intentionometer?
I think it's a gradient. I think it's a moving scale. I think it starts out greedy, because he very clearly, he even goes to her window at one point, and then she freaks out, and then Aaron thinks, she's like, oh, she's, losing her marbles. So I think it starts out very greedy because, one, that crate looks heavy, so you gotta you gotta put some intention.
Right. You're really motivated.
Yeah, and then I think towards the end, especially when they're burning the whole town down, and he steps outside and sees what's happening, I think that's when it takes back over, and he's like, "Ooh, I called it wrong."
Well, that's the thing is, I think he and everybody else, and most importantly Aaron, who has the key, like, ending insight of everybody, because her vision of what happens when you die turns out to be the winning one. Like, everyone's swapping, visions of how they die, or what happens when you die, and hers turns out to be basically the show's, interpretation is her interpretation. So, I guess her and Riley worked on it together like a school project, right? But they come to the right answer. But he, once the big, it's not hard to look around at an island that's on fire and in an ocean of blood and be like, "Wow, I made some bad choices," right? But the thing is, I don't know, man. I feel like what you said is interesting. He might have been more of a villain in episode 1 than he was in episode 7, right?
Yeah.
Which is the opposite order it should be, but maybe that's how it works, which is kind of cool. I think that's kind of exciting.
I'm just telling you, man. You carry a crate full of blood angels or whatever, whoever across an island. You tell me your intentions, buddy.
You like creature design. What'd you think of the
Oh, dude, he
vampire?
was cool, especially that first the first like full look in that cave was awesome. Especially when it ticks that this is a vampire show. Because when you watch the trailers, you're like, you think it's just going to be sort of like a religious-y kind of culty type thing, and then it's just like, boom, vampires. I was like, fuck yes, sign me up. And he looked cool. He was just a bald, weird, and I like the fact that they kept because we watched with subtitles on. I loved how like it was always like referred to as an angel. When like is it like is it an angel,
right?
Angel, like
right.
There's never like a really clear answer even in the subtitles, but the design of it one, I'm always a fan of bald vampires ever since Nosferatu. I think if you're a bald vampire, your creepiness goes up a couple notches.
Agreed.
The wings were cool. And especially the ending. There was just something, I thought there's just something really unsettling about the end when he's just noshing on Aaron and she's just taking it and like slowly carving up his thing. Like, I don't know, there's like, it's not scary. Like, it's not like a Hereditary Exorcist type scariness, but like, it's just when you see it's something you would never see in another type of vampire film or show.
Right, and she was clipping his wings, like in the story she had told about her mom making her hold the bird while she clipped the wings. She was clipping the wings of the vampire. It was a little bit of an on the nose payoff to that story, but the visuals of it were really cool. And the way you find out that the head vampire dies is phenomenal.
Oh,
right?
that last
line. You don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't see it. It's the line that tells you that he's dead, which is just so
What did you
cool.
think of the design as a monster?
I love the design. I loved, like you said, I think my favorite moment though, and this is one of the things, so, you know, let's take Pumpkinhead, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pumpkinhead is a great creature design, legendary creature design in horror, huge cult following. I love the movie, but it's hard not to notice that a lot of the movie is shot basically in black because they didn't want to shed too much light on this thing, right? But when the Easter Vigil happens and they dress the I'm calling him an angel, when they dress the angel vampire in the full religious garments and bring him in, and he's standing there with his arms out and his palms up and whatever, but on display in like full light, and it still works. That's the hallmark of a great design. If you can plunk it down into a brightly lit scene and it's still scary, that's
even the shot
gold.
I will say the scariest shot, like, that I think kind of wigged Alex and I out when we watched it was right before that, when the door's shut and they go to leave and they see like the tall figure just standing there, and like he's got creepy eye. Some of Mike Flanagan in eyes I really did, because he did the same shit in like Dr. Sleep, with everyone's eyes kind of having that weird glow. But yeah, that scene right there is like, if you do like a horror movie montage of, you know, what's going to be in the this decade, there's no way that vampire does not show up in like 20 shots. Like, it is amazing.
It's amazing. He's so good. And you know, the thing is, I just want to, because, you know, this is like an A+ review, and we, you know, I'm probably gonna watch this thing. You know,
I'm gonna rewatch that scene because I got to see it again now that we talk about it.
Right. I mean, it's just like a gift to the horror community that this is something that can be produced out of the horror community, and get some notice and acclaim even outside, you know, the circle that we usually operate in. But it's not perfect, right? The unintentionally. The funniest scene to me, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, and it's probably like whatever, but I talk a lot, as you can tell from these podcasts, when I watch movies. If I'm really getting into them, I'm an enthusiast. If I get excited, I start, you know, like whatever. So I knew you
were going to blow up on this. Like, I knew you were going to watch this. I was so excited for it.
Quiet. I was dead quiet watching this show for most of it. Like, you're just absorbing it. When I realized that the dead body from the car accident was actual stained glass, I'm like, all right, I just got to shut up and absorb this, right? Because there's like really interesting things happening in it. But there's this moment where the doctor, who, by the way, her mom, all of those great characters. We just don't have enough time in the episode to cover everyone, but. Like, even the bit characters on the island, even the people you just meet for a second, like or a scene or two, are so well done and so well acted and so well cast and so well portrayed. But there's this moment where the doctor goes to report to the sheriff that that she wants him to go investigate St. Patrick's because she thinks they're poisoning the communion there, and.
I forgot all about the doctor.
She goes and she goes and tells the sheriff this, and the sheriff she goes, we gotta do right away. We gotta put a stop to this right away. It's a crime. They're spreading a contagion. I'm a doctor. I'm telling you, like whatever. And he goes, do you know why I joined the police force? And then 10 minutes later, he's done with his story. And literally, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I swear to God, this story encompasses maybe 8 minutes of time, right, in the show. And by the time this unbelievably lengthy biographical, basically mini memoir is done of why the sheriff, like the show, she goes, so you were going to investigate St. Patrick's? I turned to Jenny while we were watching it, and this is why I'm saying I didn't talk during the show much, but I turned to her, I'm like, and this is why no crimes are ever reported on this island. Can you imagine if you go to report crimes, like you go, someone broke into my car. Let me tell you about my first car. And then you strap in for like an 8-minute fucking story from the sheriff about like the origin of cars and Model T Fords.
I saw a really funny TikTok.
What was
similar to that? It was someone was like, "Hey, can you pass me one of those oranges?" And the guy turns around and he goes, "I remember when I first had an orange. I was young." And like he just starts to talk. He just starts to like
That's right.
do a memoir.
That's what that fucking was. It was absurd, right? And there is a lot of that in the show. So
there was only like one or two of those dialogues
flaws
I checked out on, like one or two of them, because I mean, there's like 5 every episode. But out of 7 episodes, the fact that only 2 of them I sort of like checked my phone at, like that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's a lot of talk.
No, and the monologue itself is inherently interesting. The backstory of how he got to where he got is interesting. All that. It's just so badly placed in the context, like that it was such a thin excuse to put that speech there, right? I didn't object to the speech. I objected to,
the
there's
urgency.
no sense of urgency of like the fact that missing people, the clock is ticking. They might be, you don't know what's happening to them. They might be getting, Silence of the Lamb. They might have to put lotion in the basket.
It's a good thing she didn't go to the fire department, because they would have been like, "There's a fire. We need you to take it out with water." And he's like, "I remember when I was swimming one year, and the water was surrounding me, and I
right." Right, and the last thing I wanted to say was that we have yet another one of these almost biannual at this point announcements that they've discovered the true Zodiac killer as we record.
Is that real? Is that real? By the way,
I mean, it seems to have some validity to it, but it seems like it could also be one of those things where a year from now you're buying the discovery of the real Jack the Ripper book in the $1.99 bin at the bookstore because it's been debunked, right? And nobody cares because your guess was wrong. But they seem to have some pretty interesting evidence from the way they broke the cipher. It makes sense that if the Zodiac's real last name was Post, and they're theorizing that it's a guy whose name was Poste, that he would sign the letters and say, you're sincerely, and then he would just put a postage stamp. So the fact that his name's Post and he's ending the letter with a stamp is pretty slick, right? So if those things are true, then sure, right? But it got me thinking about how hard it is in horror and in life probably to be a completely solo villain, right? Like it's Jim Jones and his Jonestown community manages to take out an entire community, but he has help. He has other people in the church that are enabling him. He's got a support structure. He's got investors, right? It takes a village to be a really destructive villain, right? And the lone villains, I mean, the Zodiac worked so hard and put so much thought. It sounds fucked up like I'm endorsing it, but I'm not. But he worked so hard, and he put so much thought into, like, how do I communicate to the police, but also hide my tracks? Like, where do I strike and kill and get away with it and keep the pattern enough of not a pattern where they can't track me? And he only managed to kill like 5-6 people, right? Monsignor Pruitt manages to wipe out an entire island, like he dropped a bomb on it, right? but it's because he has help, right?
Right.
The villains need help. They need assistance to really spread their damage, right? And we see that with the pandemic, and we see that with when historical events go awry. We saw that actually with 9/11. Like, you can see that it takes like a complicit support structure to have villains maximize their damage potential, right? And I found it interesting that the Zodiac worked his whole life and only managed to kill 5 people, and this, religious community goes sideways for, a week, and hundreds of people die, right? And put the whole world at risk. And I think what I found ultimately most interesting about that was the fact that Bev really was the one who jumped in and started architecting, just like the apostles did for Jesus. Like, if you don't believe in Jesus as religious, if you're a secular, if you believe that Jesus existed as a man, as an incredibly talented individual who was a gifted communicator and a bit of a troublemaker and a bit of a rogue genius, right? But he never wrote anything down. And the only reason it kind of lasted, if you're not doing the divine answer, because he's a blip on Roman radar. He was like one news report on one day for the Roman Empire, right? Like, he was like headline news. He was like the third article in headline news for hour 3, and that was it. So they didn't even know it happened, right? But if you believe in the secular thing, it was the fact that they took everything he did and architected a religion around it that gave it its true power, in the secular sense, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact that Bev jumps in with all her interpretations, and the fact that the show is clever enough so that when we first meet Bev, like the very first time, first of all, she's already mixing up religion and dating, like, because she's a weirdo. Like, she goes to the dock to meet Pruitt. Pruitt's not there. And then she comes back and she goes, "It's okay. I went to meet you there, and you weren't there. You left me there. Like, I was jilted, like, on the stage at a prom, like a prom date." That's a weird analogy.
It is weird
for picking up, right? Because she's already crosswired, right? But the fact that she jumped in, and the fact that Joe's dog snaps at her as she's walking by, right? And Joe and the sheriff say the true interpretation of what's happening. And the true interpretation of what's happening is that dog is just waiting for its dad. It's outside, and it's in a bad mood because its dad has left him tied outside. And the sheriff literally says to Bev, he's just waiting for his daddy, right? And she goes, "No, that dog, he was going to take off my hand. He was mean. He was lunging at me." She has an interpretation of events that is the worst spin on the events. And it's also inaccurate, right? And she's going to serve that role through the entire course of the story, right? Every time the father does something, he kills Joe, and he's just sitting there, and he doesn't even know what to think of it. Joe's like dead on the floor, and he's covered in blood. And she's like, "Oh, praise be." Like, God moved through you to do this. And then she gives the explanation why. And it's wrong. She's as wrong about that as she was about the dog. But that's her job in the story, is to take the maximal bad potential of the worst, most pessimistic spin of something and make everyone accept it, right? And the fact that they gave us a taste of it at the very beginning in this passing scene with the dog that you don't even think about ever again, but it's the key to her whole character, is phenomenal, right? I can't wait to rewatch the rest of it.
I hardly ever rewatch series, but I think over the course of the past hour, I've been convinced to.
and dude, in an eyes wide shut way, it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful show. There's so many like Christmas colors and red and green and blue lighting, and I don't know. It's just a gorgeous show. The shots, the candle vigil when they're walking.
Oh, I love that.
And the camera pulls up high from like, with the way Hitchcock did the birds with the phone booth bird scene and shoots down on the candle procession. Oh my God, it's just visual. I could watch a show with no sound.
No,
Amazing.
it's like a 10 out of 10 show, like pretty easily.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, I score this show 18 out of 10 where it matters, and like 4 out of 10 for everything that the internet hates about it. I do think it's too speechifying. I do think it's kind of heavy-handed on the nose on some parts, but that's what I'm trying to say is that there's some other things where that see Titanic has that, right? Not this. I know this is not a horror thing. Titanic has that, but it doesn't fucking matter because as soon as the ship starts sinking, it's amazing, right? Who cares? The rest of it's bad. The characters are like the worst sketched out on a napkin character arc. I get it. All that's bullshit. It's bad writing. It's corny as fuck. It's like all that. But then the special effects kick in, and that's why you're here.
And just to so would Erin be the unsinkable Molly Brown?
She would.
Okay.
She's if the unsinkable Molly Brown was flammable.
Yeah. Exactly. Cool. Well, I mean, that's anything else to add to the episode?
Yeah, that's Midnight Mass. Go check it out.
Let
us know what you think of Midnight Mass, and I'm willing to entertain the slings and arrows of I didn't like this or I didn't like that part of it. I'd be interested to see other opinions of it. I saw the critics like it, but that doesn't really count because there aren't many good working critics anymore. Well, I mean, it means something. Film criticism at its best is also an art.
Well,
right?
like I was telling you, since we're doing this remote, I'm in Ohio because we premiered our movie last night, and this old guy left the theater. And the guy went, "How was it?" And he went, "Terrible." But other people thought it was good. So
we should talk about that real quick. How do you check out that movie? Is there a way to do this?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon right now. It's called Eating Cars. It is kind of a funky little movie. It was made for $20,000. Like it is low budget. He's got some B movie monster makeup towards the end there. It's basically about a girl in LA who's trying to get out of Dodge, but she has to offload some drugs before she does, and there's a couple of assassins after her wanting the money. So it's really fun. The editing and it is beautiful. I might say so myself.
I love the title.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then after the screening, Trevor had edible suckers in the shape of a car. So after watching Eating Cars, you could eat cars, and the film students there loved it. That's
awesome. That is awesome. It's just so exciting that you're at a film Q&A, and the only non-exciting part is it made us wake up at 8 a.m. and do this.
Well, what's funny is there was this one guy there who loved the movie. He was like, I go to these art house movies all the time, and they're always predictable. He goes, I had no idea where this movie was going. He's like, I really enjoyed the fact that I couldn't predict it. And I was like, could you do me a favor and put that on Rotten Tomatoes, because that will instantly put us at 100%. I was like, just go ahead.
That's awesome.
Just go ahead, throw it on there. So
this is awesome.
Yeah, so let us know.
100% fresh. 100%. Go check out the Eating Cars 100% fresh.
100% fresh. Unless that old dude who couldn't walk has an account, and then we're fucked. we're screwed. But yeah, let us know what you guys think of Midnight Mass. I'm very curious too, because it's not a very scary show, but it's a very well done show. So let us know in the reviews on iTunes. We cracked 50. Who's going to be 51? You know what I'm saying? Like, who's going to be that 51st person? And it's Halloween season now. We got to watch a bunch more horror movies.
Dude, it's finally. I know you went to the home of fall weather over there on the East Coast, but LA is never fall vibes, and it is completely overcast, a little rainy. It's a nice 68 degrees. LA is never like this, and I finished Midnight Mass, and they just did a Val Lewton marathon on Turner Classic Movies. So
Criterion added all the Universal films online, I think. Yeah, I think I saw a post about that today.
It's such a good season. Unbelievable. I love the way this season is locking in to sort of save Halloween. We did an episode where, are you disillusioned with Halloween or whatever? And I feel like ever since we did that, we should do an episode where we're like disillusioned with our lack of winning lottery tickets, because every time you express like disillusion with you're like, you know what, Halloween season has been crap lately, and all of a sudden it's fucking amazing.
The next episode's gonna be Untitled, and it's just gonna they're just gonna hear us with scratch offs, just nothing. Next. so until next time, stay scary, watch a bunch of horror movies, and get some lottery tickets. We'll talk to you next time. Bye guys.
Bye guys.